Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, this is Foti.
And this is Ari,
And we want to welcome you to the Urban Wine Club podcast,
where we interview fun and exciting guests and learn more about their lives while sipping various amazing wines.
On today's episode, we chat with our good friend Paul Delios of Kane's Donuts.
Paul tells us about his life as a chef, a businessman, and current donut magnate.
Pour yourself a glass and let's get to know Paul. So today we have one of our dear friends, Paul Delios of Kane's Donuts, on the show with us. And it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here to begin with.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Foti, I greatly appreciate you having me on the show. And
you know, I've known you for quite some time. I've known you for maybe 15, 16 years.
You guys have a long history together. From back when I first met you, I remember you talking about Paul. Where did you guys first meet?
I'm the senior citizen over there. And it was over 20 years ago.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Time flies, huh?
Do you remember when you first met?
Actually, yes, I do. It was
We were formulating the plans to open up Mezze Estiatorio in Charlestown.
So Mezze Estiatorio, can you guys give us a really brief, what was that?
I think it was a restaurant ahead of its time, right? Ahead of its time, yeah. Besides that, it was a restaurant, obviously, right? But it was a collaboration between a group of us.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was a high-end restaurant, wasn't it?
High-end restaurant.
I don't like to use the word high-end.
Well, but we were doing very contemporary food. It was traditional Greek dishes, but the spin on it was to plate and infuse the dishes with what's being done today with other cuisines.
Yeah. You guys were pretty much ahead of your time there, and it was in a very trendy, swanky area in Charlestown.
It was. Charlestown at the time was very much up and coming.
Yeah.
For example, we took something as simple as a Greek village salad, and we stacked it up with the presentation. And
I remember that. I remember the pictures of that, and I was always like, I've been eating Greek salads my whole life, and I was like, that.
Well, it was kind of a play where people would bring this stacked salad with all the different vegetables and the tomatoes and cukes and everything all stacked up, and the server would come to the table, put the fork in it, and slice it right down the center, and everything would break into wedges.
So you guys had like the whole presentation down. You had like the style. It was a very cool place.
It was well thought out.
So that's where you guys met.
We did. We met there through
and
mutual friends.
You formed a relationship, a bond. Because you guys have been doing stuff
big
together
brother,
ever since.
Younger brother, that kind of deal.
And I have to tell you to go back a little bit to the days when Foti and I first, got introduced to each other. We had to formulate the wine list for the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So Foti, through the different wine purveyors, brought in probably about 600 bottles of wine.
Oh, jeez.
So every day for about a month, we would sit back and test bottles of wine. And
were you tasting properly or spitting back out? Or
it depends what time.
It was just, it was one of those situations where by the end of the evening, after we got through tasting the wine, we're kind of leaning on each other to sit straight up. It was a fun job, though. Somebody had to do it,
It sounds like it was a good time.
It really was. It was fun. It was, good memories. It was a fun time.
I remember visiting the restaurant and just saying, "Wow, this is such a cool place," and great layout. Everybody involved seemed to know what they're doing. You were the chef, and you made some incredible plates there. Foti was the bar wine director, and great selection. Everybody used to talk about it. It was a cool place.
I'm just going to jump in for a second and say that Foti is very modest about this, but he did get a Wine Spectator's Award of Excellence. for the wine list that we put together at the restaurant.
Well, this is why we partnered together on a wine club.
Yeah,
definitely.
Incidentally,
stuff.
I need to take a little sip because we're drinking Moscofilito for you folks at home.
So, what are you drinking, Paul?
Moscofilito.
So that's a nice dry white wine from Greece. That's very pleasurable and enjoyable.
It's delicious.
What about you, Ari? What's in your glass?
I don't know. You poured it for me.
I think
Because I'm the outside guy. I'm learning about wine just like everybody out there.
I think he's got the Moscofilito as well. Do you taste that little bit of green apple in that?
I do. It's good.
So Moscofilito, for those folks at home that have never had it, it's kind of light in style. It's crisp. Some people say it can taste like a Pinot Grigio. Other people say it can taste like almost like a Sauv. But it's definitely. This particular one. It's very light. It's crisp. It's got a little green apple and not too much minerality to it. What do you think, Foti?
I think it's great, refreshing.
Is it a popular wine here?
Is
it a popular wine in Greece?
It's popular in Greece. It's kind of rare and unique in this market, meaning in the U.S.
Do you feel that non-Greeks in like the American market are buying or trying this wine?
Only at the restaurant level. In my opinion, it's that's basically where folks get their first experiences. Restaurants that are either Greek-inspired, they have a Greek menu, or there is someone on the team that's Greek that will bring Moscofilito to their wine program. But that's, I think, the first port of entry for guests is to try Moscofilito. It's not that really available in most markets, but where it is, for those that do try it, they do enjoy it.
So everyone out there listening, if you have the opportunity, get out there and try it. I mean, it's definitely worth a try. We like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys met at Meze. And what happened next? Where did you guys go from there?
So thanks to the popularity of the restaurant, and,
it was very popular.
It opened a lot of doors for a lot of us. We started to kind of venture off into different projects, myself included, moving on to other wine ventures, and then Paul. Paul took a direction that really catapulted him out there, not just Boston based, not even I think U.S. based, but I gotta say globally based with his involvement with Kane's Donuts.
Well, Kane's.
So did we talk about that? Paul is the founder, owner, or is your parents?
He's not just a donut guy.
Well, we know we'll get into that. We know that, but I'm trying to think.
Well, Kane's Donuts is a 65-year-old iconic business. We've been in Bon Appetit magazine. We've been on the Food Network, the Travel Channel. It is one of the most iconic donut shops in America.
Yeah, and from everything that I've seen and read, and being a local here, everybody knows it.
Well, I took a mom and pop operation that was my mother and father had purchased back in the 80s, and I introduced what I knew from being a chef, which was the use of fresh local ingredients in everything that we do.
Which is so popular nowadays.
Well, I think not only is it popular, Ari, but it's important because I think parents, when they're feeding their kids or their family, they want to make sure that the products that are going into them are going to be some of the cleanest and best that they can give their kids.
Yeah.
So we use everything from all natural organic honey to locally milled wheat. Organic eggs, as well as dairy. All the dairy that we use is local.
That's very important to know because, some people out there that don't really know, you just hear donut and you're like, oh yeah, well, I've had good donut, blah, blah, blah. But me, for example, my wife, my sister, if they know the ingredients you use, organic and local and this and that, they will be drawn right to Kane's right off the bat above everybody else.
Well,
as they should.
As they should, yeah.
And you mentioned a couple of key things, your wife and your sister. Women make 80% of the decisions.
100% my family.
All right. Well, they make the decisions about where they're going to take the kids, where they're going to eat.
Yep.
How many times you have a guy that comes home and he says, "Honey, what would you like to eat tonight?" And she says, "Oh, what's for dinner?" And she says, "Well, I was thinking maybe we can go out." And the husband says, "Oh, all right, yeah, that sounds good." And she picks out the restaurant she wants to go to.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have any experience about
that statistic that you just mentioned is true for also when it comes time to decide on what wine to get at a restaurant. 80% of the time, it's the woman that actually makes the decision on what wine they're going to have.
I would agree. Given our history in the restaurant business, I would agree. The women sitting at the
Make
table.
sure you make them happy.
Oh, yeah. So, Daddy wants Mommy coming home happy. So she picks out whatever she wants when it comes to that wine. So over the years, I was a chef in Boston, and I had an Italian restaurant. I had the Greek restaurant that we were all involved with. And it was a lot of fun, but when I decided to get out of the restaurant business, my mom and dad were older, and they wanted me to, stick around the area and run the donut shop, and they decided to turn it over to myself and my siblings. So what I did was just took everything that I knew from being a chef and incorporated that into the donut business.
And I think that was a good call, and your background as a chef certainly helped because you guys have some awesome donuts.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We just, we've been growing every year. We opened up a donut shop in Boston down the Financial District. And then we opened another one out on Route 1, which is a major highway here in the Boston area. And so that
how many
process,
locations
we
you
have
have?
3 right now.
3 locations.
And that process is all within, I would say the growth was probably within the last 5 years that we opened up a couple of shops, but Kane's has been around for 65 years.
Wow. It's an institution.
It is an institution. It's an iconic business. And you don't see a lot of 65-year-old businesses
Certainly not.
in America. I mean, you see a lot of these chains that come in and they take over and so forth. And, we've been able to survive amongst the sea of chains.
And the good thing is, I think a lot of the younger generations see the value of like these iconic old school places, and they love that. You know, the chains are chains. But you see this 65-year-old place, and it honestly makes like the best donuts ever. I mean, how can they not love it?
Well, people come in, they want to get the best of whatever they're buying, and they want to make sure that their kids are getting the best. So we try to provide that. We treat every one of the customers coming in the door like their family, and I think that translates through the quality of what we put out. We try to do the best that we can.
You have any best sellers? Anything that stands out? Anything that a listener can go in and suggest that they try?
Sure. The number one donut that we sell is the honey dip donut because
That's my favorite.
Oh,
it's made with real honey. Travel and Leisure magazine a few years ago said if you want a beignet, you go to the Café Du Monde in New Orleans. If you want a glazed donut, you go to Kane's Donuts and get a honey dip donut.
Wow.
I agree, 100%.
We're really proud about what we do.
How about Paul? Tell us about this gigantic coffee roll.
Well, the coffee.
Is that the coffee roll that another friend of ours who's a comedian brought it? Where was that?
But
the first time I saw
all you
it
remember
was,
is the coffee roll.
It
You
was
don't
like
remember
this,
anything else but the coffee roll.
yeah.
All right, so the coffee roll was something that my dad took the regular size coffee roll and said, "Look, we're Greek. Let's share this. Let's create something that we can share." So he expanded the size of it and said, "Now, this is something people can take home and cut it and share it with their guests. Rather than giving some individual piece of pastry to everyone, this is something that can fit within what my father's framework was of a shareable treat.
It's awesome.
Yes. So
So that's what Paul is up to today. And then you guys did some stuff together, if I recall correctly. Did you not? That was more Greek centric.
We did
cooking.
a couple projects. We collaborated together and we published a cookbook called At the Greek Table. So after we ventured off in our own directions, we still wanted to kind of keep ourselves close and kind of be active with, what we brought to the table at the restaurant is we wanted to bring it to the table through a publication called At the Greek Table.
Which is appropriately named.
Right?
And it featured Paul's recipes and
your
wine
recipes,
pairings?
and I took every single recipe that Paul put together, and I paired wine with each recipe to help the reader kind of give him some direction of what to have with those, those meals.
Is that cookbook available?
It is. It's available through Amazon.
And we're proud to say that we've gotten 5-star reviews from everyone that has reviewed it on Amazon.
So if you guys out there are interested, go to Amazon and search for At the Greek Table.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to kind of bring out to light is that, if I can call you chef, like the old days.
Sure.
Is you entertain a lot. From what I understand, you bring a lot of guests to the house.
He has a great kitchen.
As a host, how do you go about putting together wines for your guests that come in? What approach do you take when you're hosting? You're going to have a group of people from all different backgrounds. What is your approach to what wines you're going to have available that evening or that afternoon for your guests?
Well, I think that I like to take a look at what I'm going to be serving.
Yep.
Number one. And I always like to start off with something that's a light styled wine, whether it be a white or a rosé, and then kind of pair that up with the appetizer portion of the meal. And I like to stand around while we're having the appetizer so that people can kind of relax a little bit and talk and sip the wine, And we've got a little bar in my house that people can stand around and they can nibble and get to know each other when they come in the door. And I always like to bring people in that don't always know each other so that
there you go.
They can talk about different things, and maybe sometimes they have a little bit of experiences in common that they can discuss.
Right.
And I think that always makes for an interesting evening.
Excellent.
But then I like to look at what I'm going through and serving with the next course, and in that I determine whether I'm going to go with something that's a little bit heavier relative to the wine, or something that's really a full-bodied red wine. Here in America, California cabs are really big, but there are a lot of other wines that I like to go through, like different Pinot Grigios, different Pinot Noirs.
Right.
It all depends on
so
what I'm serving.
Your approach is basically about, it all comes down to what you're cooking, right?
Yeah,
what
it's
you're serving.
what I'm cooking, but for the folks out there listening, it's not always about red has to go with meat,
right,
and white has to go with fish. I like to look at the lightness or the depth of a wine, because there's many times that I'll say, okay, I have a real kind of beefy kind of a white wine, let's say, that's really buttery and really oaky, and I think that can stand up to, like, let's say a pork dish,
absolutely,
or even a lamb dish. You know what I'm saying, guys? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be driven by the old school of thought.
Right.
That's something I think came about back in the Victorian era. I don't know. I'm just saying. We want to try to explore wine for what it is, and try to pair it up with different things. You don't have to play by the old rules. We're living in a modern world.
Well, we know that it's tough to make everyone happy. Obviously, when you have a large group that you're hosting and entertaining at the house. So I'm sure our listening audience would like some tips about, what's the best approach. And from what we're hearing is, based on what you're cooking, if you put out wines that are relatively, pairable with the dishes, then your guests should be fine to some extent.
Okay,
correct?
They should be. But we always have somebody that really wants to go on their own and drink whatever they like.
Ari.
So yeah, but I always like to make sure that we have a variety of spirits available as well.
All right.
I know we're at the Urban Wine Club here at the Urban Wine Club, but I'm just saying we need to have.
We don't discriminate.
No, we need to have some spirits available for the folks that want to have some something a little bit, more in depth in that regard. I also like to make sure that I have not just the wine that I'm featuring with the different courses of the meal, but maybe a little something. Maybe some of the women like to go with, or some of the guys might want to go with a little bubbly at the beginning.
Sure.
Rather than going
Bubbles
with
absolutely.
And listen, we all like that. It goes well with a lot of the appetizer stuff, because a lot of the appetizer stuff that we usually find are a little bit more buttery, a little bit more rich, and that's why you only have an appetizer of it. You're not making that the main course.
Right.
So you want something that can cut through that fattiness, and something that you're going to be able to enjoy.
Right.
So it goes really well on the palate. That's what I find. So have a little bit of an assortment. Don't go crazy. Feature the wines that you want to feature, but have something, in reserve.
Often enough, I always hear folks that just get overwhelmed, and we overthink it, we overanalyze it.
Sure.
But I think that if you stick to your guns on what you want, what you're putting out for food, pair a couple of the wines with the food, have something light, something a little rich, I think things will flow just fine.
Yeah. For example, I've gone to many an event and party, and what I find, the folks will create a cheese platter, for example, and they'll have like 5 different cheeses. You don't need to go to that extent.
Right. I
Put
agree.
something that's a hard cheese, and then put a soft cheese out there. Put a couple of pieces of fruit, whether it's grapes, whether it's some dried apricots, whatever the case may be. Put that out there, and then maybe pick a dried sausage of some type. Put that on there. Maybe you can have a little nuts. Put that on the plate. Maybe if you want to deviate, you can put a little bit of a jam on the plate as well.
Sounds good.
So, and you want not only crackers. It doesn't have to be crackers. You can take and get a French baguette of some sort, or whatever your favorite bread is, and slice that up and let the folks that are at your gathering, let them enjoy that as well. A couple of olives on the plate always goes nice, but you don't have to put a multitude of cheeses out there.
Sounds like a good plan to me. I also have some questions for you.
Sure.
As an avid diner, what do you look for in a wine list when you visit a restaurant? What are some of the most important things to you when you're handed the wine list and you open it up? What are you looking for?
Consistency. I like to see that the wine list is going to be consistent relative to the styles of wine. If I'm at say an Italian restaurant, I'd like to see varieties of wine that come from Italy,
right,
that are going to pair well with the food. I also like to see some wines from California, again, that are going to pair well with the food that is being served at that particular restaurant. Having said that, that doesn't mean I don't like a deep wine list. I do. Sure. I enjoy restaurants that do have a deep wine list. But I think it's easier for the guest when they're going there, that they can pick something out right away that's going to go with the food that's in the style of food that restaurant is preparing. I don't know. Does that explain it clear enough to you?
Absolutely. Being out there and dining, do you see wine programs getting better? Do you see more variety? What are your thoughts on basically when you go out there? How exciting are these wine programs?
I see the chef-driven restaurants coming up with creative, unique wine lists. I see some of the chains starting to explore some of these unique varietals that are out there, and we spoke about Moscofilito earlier. I was just I'll name a local chain if you don't mind, Legal Seafood.
Sure.
And I think Sandy Block, who runs their
Good
wine
friend of
program,
ours.
great guy. He's had a bunch of different wines on the list, and he goes out and sources some small vineyards and out in California. But also, he's not afraid to go with some of the
Sure.
different varieties that come from different countries that are lesser known. And I just happened to be in there, and it was very pleasurable. I was having a great meal, and I had a glass of Moscafilito that Sandy just happened to be featuring that night.
Excellent.
And I think that by some of these larger chains doing what some of the chef-driven restaurants are doing, it's educating the consumer as to what is available out there, what some of these different countries are able to produce. You know, we see a lot of French wine. We see a lot of California wine. We see some wines from Spain. We don't see a lot of wine from Greece. We don't see a lot of wine from Portugal. But we'll take Greece and we'll take Portugal. Wonderful wines coming from both of those countries.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Wonderful. And you know, and even down in South America. If you take some of the wines that are coming out of Argentina or Chile, phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely.
And really great price points for people.
Yes.
If you go to even a local wine shop, I'm sure they're carrying some stuff that is lesser known, but don't be afraid to try it.
I totally agree.
It's just like, years ago, people say to me, "How did you learn about wine?" Well, I would go into one of the little local wine shops in the area, and I would see bins of wine that were like, buy 3 wines for $12 back then.
Love those.
And I would buy 3 different wines that I never heard, and I would go in and I would try the different wines, and it's just a great way to teach yourself about what's out there.
You're basically saying just keep drinking a lot of wine to learn.
Well, listen,
I could
wine.
go for that.
Yeah, it's hey.
No, you're right. There's something to be said about that. I mean, it's one thing to listen and read about wine, but obviously it all comes from actually personal experiences, and over time, some folks do get stuck in their comfort zone, so they're just consuming the wines that they're more comfortable with. But the second they kind of branch out, I think things come naturally to them as based on being able to differentiate, the different styles that they enjoy.
Well, on that note, let me ask you both a question. Being the newbie and the least familiar with wines, I'll go into a restaurant.
We're going to change that. I just want to tell you,
Well,
we're going to change that.
That's what I want perfectly. But for people out there, like you go to a restaurant, if you like deep dark reds, or you like something light and fruity, or is there any recommendation of how to order at a restaurant?
Yes.
Like, what could you ask? What are the right things to say?
The easiest approach today, and it should have been done years ago, but asking your server to sample whatever is available by the glass is the first approach to asking for a recommendation, even though depending on the individual that's serving you, whether it's at the bar, whether it's in the dining room, they can describe wines and they can give their recommendations from a personal perspective, but it doesn't always translate to what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is always ask for a sample of anything that's offered by the glass. And most restaurants, if not all, are very open to doing so. So that would be the first tip or advice, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. Agree more.
Some folks get a little, they get a little iffy about is it the right thing to do.
The thing with me is my wife constantly asks to sample, but it's like after 2 or 3,
as long as you're
long
as you're not sampling the same wine over and over.
Yeah. Can you imagine? They might be doing that.
Right. But yes.
But I always wonder, is there? She always asks for bold, thick, and dark. Is that are those the right terms for her?
Yes, because it's all about the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It's all about texture. So that's fine. I mean, there's no right or wrong when it's describing from your personal perspective what you like, even though you don't know the quote unquote proper terminology.
Yeah.
But it's all personal preference, right? So
that's good to know.
It's good for those the professionals that are in the industry to understand where they're coming from, even though they're not using quote unquote the correct terms. Right?
I never thought
I just want to explain something to the listeners out there, and most of the listeners are probably familiar with dairy products. Mm-hmm. So there's a level of viscosity or thickness. So when you go to try wines, you can start off with the skim milk version, which would be the Sauvignon Blanc. You can work your way all up to the heavy cream, which would be that big, beefy California Cabernet. And we know that that's got a certain unctuousness. It's got that creaminess to it. And I look at coffee the same way, guys.
Yeah.
I take coffee the same way. A breakfast blend is like the skim milk. That's like what you find at one of the big chain stores. It's something that's easy for people to drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you go to some of the beefier blends, the darker roasts, not necessarily burnt like one of the other chains likes to do, but a darker roast, that tends to be more creamier as far as coffee goes, more beefy, and people that drink black coffee would understand that by what I'm saying, Foti being one of them. So you have to look at, when people say thick, when it comes to wine, they want that one that's going to be more like the heavy cream, more like the Cabernet. When you want to go to the light style, you want something that's like the breakfast blend, like the skim milk. It's, you know, it's the viscosity, it's that thickness. Somewhere in the middle is going to be your Merlot or your light cream.
Yeah.
So that's where you take that approach. I don't know if that's clear enough, but I hope you folks at home can.
It makes sense.
You know, that's the analogies that I can
because
give you.
My wife and I have like opposite tastes. She loves the heavy cream of the wines.
Yeah.
And I like the lighter, fruitier, smoother.
That suits you.
Right? Yeah. You know.
Absolutely.
I always have Foti order for me when we go anywhere because he knows best.
And on that, just one more note about the fact that when you ask for samples, and don't be shy. If it doesn't work for you, you don't like it, don't.
Well, that's an important point because it gets to the point where, like, I'm like, all right, honey, you've tried 3, that's enough. Pick one.
Yeah. No, I mean, just saying, like, if you're offered a sample to try, and you're at that moment where everyone's looking at you as you're sipping the wine to see if you like it, if it doesn't work for you, don't feel obligated or awkward that no, this is not for me.
And be confident in what you want.
Yeah, because let's face it, today dining out has become kind of pricey.
Oh yeah.
And statistically, we're spending an average of $12 to $15 a glass. So it adds up pretty quickly. So why should you be stuck with a $15 glass of wine that you're struggling to finish?
Good point. Right? Yeah. Interesting.
Anytime I ever struggle to finish anything, my wife just grabs the glass and says, "I'll take care of that, honey."
There you go. Well, we need more people like that to back us up.
So, Paul, Foti and I both know about your history in the restaurant world. Why don't you just give us a brief description of your history?
Well, Ari, I've grew up in the restaurant business, and I come from a long line of chefs, grandfathers on both sides. But I pretty much.
Well, Paul. It's more than just that. You can't discount the fact that. You probably have either cooked side by side or compete against some of the best chefs that we know in today's culinary world. Just from what I remember with working with you, you've been side by side with the greats such as Ming Tsai and Emeril Lagasse.
Oh, wow.
Marian Esposito, and Iron Chef Michael Psoulakis on the Food Network. I remember we did a dinner together with him. I mean, that alone is something to be proud of. Besides, just cooking in the restaurant business.
Well, I've either been at events with and worked with some of them, but for me it's always about trying to be humble and not trying to be somebody,
which is great.
Yeah, but I've always tried to stay humble. That's the way I was raised. But some of the accomplishments, I've been a guest chef down at Disney World during their Food and Wine Festival. I've cooked at the Naples Food and Wine Festival with Chef Marian Esposito from Ciao Italia. I've appeared at the James Beard House as one of the featured chefs. And we did a dinner that was strictly based on small plates. In Greek, it's called meze. So that was those are a couple of the things. I've gotten picked as
You've traveled around the world.
I have.
I don't want to discount the fact that You know, you worked at some of the most luxurious resorts in Crete, Alunda Beach. You've cooked in Italy.
I've had the
We
pleasure.
can go on and on, I think, right?
You can, but again, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of wonderful people over the years, and I think that this is one of the things about being a chef. You get to cook, you get to work with, and you get to put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
That's the takeaway, in my opinion. It's, there's nothing more fulfilling and gratifying when you see full bellies and big smiles.
For me, I'll just go back and cite one example of when I had my little Italian restaurant, Paolo's Trattoria in Charlestown. We used to enjoy having people wait outside, rain, snow, no matter what the weather condition was. 3.5-hour waits.
Wow.
And, for me to see people waiting that long to eat the food that I prepared was probably the ultimate high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not to, be a braggart, because I really don't like that. But
between friends here, you could tell us.
I put the best foot forward with everything. My wife was manning the front of the house, and when folks were coming in, they were waiting in line. She would pour them a couple of ounces of whatever wine that we had featured that night, and they would sip that while they were waiting in line. And we had a wood-fired oven there, and we would make a pizza and cut it into 16 little slices and let everybody have a little taste of something. People would come by the kitchen just to say hi, and if I saw them out there, I'd throw a handful of shrimp in the frying pan with a little bit of oil and garlic and some wine and butter, and then stick toothpicks in it, and we'd hand those out to the customers while they were waiting in line.
That's a nice experience.
I think hospitality is the biggest thing, and I think that's the key to succeeding in the restaurant world today. You need to treat every guest like their family.
Well said. All right, everyone. You've been listening to Urban Wine Club Podcast. Our guest was Paul Delios. Make sure to check out Kane's Donuts. Make sure to check out the cookbook on Amazon at the Greek Table. Get some donuts. You will not regret it. canesdonuts.com. And you can find their locations, addresses, everything. I want to thank Paul again. I want to thank my co-host Foti. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.